the New York Times book review list of the top 10. Pamela Paul is the book review editor, and she joins us now to break down the top picks. Pamela, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I did see a graphic novel on the list. Are people still reading books? Let's just start with that.
They are still reading books, and I'm so relieved you're not asking me about Russian rubles. There is a graphic novel on the cover among our top 10. It is Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant by Roz Chast, which is a graphic memoir about her dealing with her two aging parents and ultimately their deaths. It was also a nominee for the National Book Award and the only nominee by a woman. And it's interesting because this is the most recent of several books that have dealt with aging parents. I think a sign that the baby boomers are reaching this point in their lives.
I want to talk about the book Redeployment by Phil Clay. He's a Marine who served in Iraq. And, my father was a career Marine, and I know that he and his friends from the service have been emailing these short stories around. It's incredibly powerful. Has enough time passed to start seeing war literature?
I think so, and we've seen a few in the last couple of years. There's some more coming out this spring. Phil Clay's book, Redeployment, it's a collection of short stories, and he is a former Marine, one of several. Kevin Power recently also wrote a book called The Yellow Birds, which was one of our top 10 a couple of years ago. But I think what's amazing about Phil Clay's book is that it deals with both soldiers, in Iraq and also when they come back here, and that rotation.
I'm fascinated by what's not on the list. My book of the year, hands down, is Henry Kissinger's World Order. A guy named Micklethwaite, he's between jobs.
Yeah. No idea who you're talking
about. He's between jobs right now. I thought he gave it a very nice, balanced review of its pros and cons. How do you pick the books?
It's very hard. This year it is true that what's notable is what's missing. There are no huge doorstop books on this year's best nonfiction. So last year there were a huge number of books on World War I, a number of books on the financial crisis.
Did you ever pick Harry Potter? Does that make the list, or is that just beneath you?
Well, we have a children's book list, so nothing is beneath that.
That's where she put the Kissinger book.
Yeah, I have to say, when Tom Keene brings up John Micklethwaite, our new boss, what he's actually saying is, I, for one, welcome our new English overlord.
Yes, exactly. That had a distinct whiff of brown-nosing. Pam, there was a book on there called On Immunity. Do you think that got a boost from Ebola?
It's interesting. I think that the book is by Ulybis, and it's really an extended essay about vaccines and all of our fears around vaccines and our fears around science and sort of what causes anxiety with new parents, our fear that there's something toxic out there. And I do think that the Ebola fear may have played into it, kind of hit at a very good moment.
I will tell you one of these books that I read with terror, which is the Sixth Extinction from Elizabeth Colbert was a terrifying book.
It is, yeah. Al Gore reviewed it for us on our cover, and she basically, by the Sixth Extinction, she's talking about the mass extinction of species. And there have been 5 previous in our history, luckily way before we came on the scene, but that we're basically going to see about 20 to 50% of the species currently on the planet die off.
About 24 months ago, I aggressively went back to reading hardcover books. Within your world and your expertise, what's the trend right now? Kindle wins? Book industry wins? Well, how's it work?
Well, you're talking to a partisan here. But,
yeah, so am I.
But I think when you look at the trends in terms of tablet reading, there was a steep increase, and then it's kind of leveled off. It's still increasing. But I think that what's happening is that even people who are reading on e-readers, they're sort of toggling between formats. So they might take the e-reader when they travel on business, and they want to carry
books.
Where
are you on this, Lisa? Where are you?
I'm E. I'm an e-reader.
You're all e-reader?
I think it's clutter. I'm sorry. I'm like, this is blasphemous. But I think that, honestly, I think that I have so much stuff. I don't want all the books collecting dust. I would rather just read the books on a tablet.
I take all the books, I buy them in hardcover, and I stack them next to my bed so that I can never read them. That's where Thomas Piketty's Capital is right now.
Although
it's just sitting there on top of the stack.
Because the death of radio has been predicted for 1 million years. Yeah. And it hasn't happened. And the death of books, you live with it every day.
Right. Video didn't kill the radio star.
Don't change a thing. This is the first thing. Let me have this.
My book was The Goldfinch.
This is the first thing I do Sunday.
This was.
I thought you read the Sunday Style.
Don't you go buy a bagel or something?
Then I do
gotta jump in because
then he goes through the weddings. Tom's scouring the wedding announcements. It's time, Brandon. Hold that thought. For our Twitter question of the day, we asked you, what is your book of the year?
Huge response.
First, Winner's Dream by Bill McDermott, CEO of SAP. That was my book of the year. #inspiration. We also got Ken Follett's Edge of Eternity, hands down the best book of the year. No one else humanizes history as well as he does. And finally, Brenda mentioned it, Capital. Thomas Piketty, or Monsieur Piketty, he answered some important questions but left enough room for further inquisition. I saw Piketty's book even made Bill Gates' top books of the year. He says he does disagree with some of the conclusions.
Did anybody read it?
He made some very interesting points.
Pamela, why are none of those books on your list?
You know, not every book can make it, but I don't know if people have read it.
Is there a lot of yelling and screaming?
About
when you guys pick the list?
There's always, there's always complaining.
Which bar do you pick this in?
I'm sorry?
Which bar do you pick this in?
Yeah, that's right. We just roll, you know, it's all a gamble.
That's great.
The result of a drinking game.
That's right.
Do you have a bookshop? Do you have a bookshop you go to?
I go to many bookshops. Yeah, I go to, you know, I still go to Barnes & Noble. I go to Books of Wonder, which is a local bookshop for children, for my kids. I go to the Strand. And I love, there's some great bookstores outside the city. Politics and Prose in Washington is a great bookstore.
The Maple Leaf Bookstore in New Orleans.